I'd like to take a couple of minutes talking about what sleep apnea actually is and why it has links to a lot of other common chronic medical conditions. So first and foremost, when you get a sleep study, it's providing a lot of information to us as the provider. There are two different kinds of sleep studies. One is completed in a lab where there's a technician that's actually monitoring your sleep and it's picking up a lot more data. Those studies aren't done as frequently anymore just because, they're a lot more expensive and it's a pretty unnatural environment. So typically people don't sleep very well in those. More commonly, sleep studies are done at home now, and the testing equipment is getting much smaller and more user-friendly for people to use. During this study, it is measuring a lot of different parts of information. First, it's measuring your heart rate and your oxygen level. It's also picking up your sleeping position and snoring. And then most importantly, it's measuring apneas or hypopneas. Now, what an apnea is it means there is a complete blockage in breathing for at least 10 seconds, okay? So if you have a 9-second pause, that will not count. Okay. Now, a hypopnea event means there is some level of difficulty breathing. So it must be accompanied with a drop in the oxygen level of the blood by a 3 or 4%. So the oxygen level must go from 95% down to 91 before it would register. After the testing is complete, the sleep physician will look through all of the data and count the number of times throughout the night that you're having trouble breathing. And then they give you what's called an AHI score. Okay, so this is the apnea hypopnea index, and that's really just a kind of an indicator of the severity of the problem. Okay, so if somebody has an AHI score of 10, that means on average 10 times per hour or every 6 minutes, there is some level of problem breathing. Now, the higher the number, the worse the problem. So they're going to grade the severity of the problem based on that number. So to have a mild degree of sleep apnea, that means you must have at least 5 to 15 breathing events per hour. For moderate sleep apnea, it's 15 to 30 breathing events per hour. And for somebody with severe sleep apnea, you have more than 30 events per hour, or there's, difficulty breathing at least every other minute. Okay. Now, based on the severity, that's going to kind of guide the treatment decisions. Now, we do see ties to a lot of other common medical problems. Okay. So one of the most common conditions that we see links with is the cardiovascular system. Okay. Every time that you are struggling to breathe, your body kind of goes into a state of fight or flight and is releasing a lot of hormones and stress mediators to say, hey, you're not breathing over here. It's time to wake up. And so over time leads to poor blood pressure control, right? A lot of times we'll see if somebody's taking multiple blood pressure medications, it's not well controlled. Usually there's some level of sleep apnea present. Additionally, we'll see AFib or other cardiovascular problems. And so sometimes people come to me simply because their cardiologist is picking up on sleep apnea, underlying sleep apnea condition. Now, we do know that the life expectancy of somebody with unmanaged, untreated sleep apnea can be upwards of 20 years shorter, right? So there's a really strong link to preterm heart attack and stroke. And for comparison, a chronic smoker, their life expectancy is only about 7 years shorter. So it's really straining and damaging to the whole heart, okay? Additionally, we'll see links with weight, okay? So during sleep, there's a lot of hormone regulation that's happening, and the disruptions caused by sleep apnea can kind of disturb that balance, okay? So somebody that's, has links with type 2 diabetes specifically, but also we'll see that there's these hunger modulating hormones that's going to kind of drive your desire to eat certain types of food, stronger desire to eat fatty foods. So those patients are going to have, a harder time losing weight and more ability to gain weight. We also see really strong ties to the cognitive system. Okay? During sleep, your brain is kind of taking a bath. Throughout the day, you get this kind of beta amyloid plaque buildup that's kind of gets junky in the brain, and the sleep creates this kind of flush of cerebrospinal fluid that's kind of flushing out some of this gunk. And so we're starting to see stronger links and connections with cognitive problems, Alzheimer's and dementia in people that have poor sleep apnea, because the brain's just not able to take the bath that it needs. Additionally, it's just, people will a lot of times tell me they have poor concentration, focus issues, and they just are struggling, throughout the day to be mentally present because of the disruption of the sleep apnea. We'll also see ties to pain. And so sleep is hugely important in your body's healing response. And so people that get poor quality sleep will have greater perception of pain, more delayed healing, and it takes longer for them to fully recover. Another really scary thing is just, the fatigue symptoms, right? So when you're kind of chronically fatigued throughout the day, greater chance of drowsy driving, and falling asleep behind the wheel. Those kind of accidents are, very, very dangerous and scary. And for some people, it's greater ties with anxiety and depression, and they just don't have as good of a kind of ability to cope with their daily life. And for some people, it's less of the chronic medical problems, but it's more of just the impact that it's having on their relationship and their life, right? When they're really noisy, it's disturbing their partner's sleep. And so then the partner is frustrated and waking their patient up. And, this creates this cycle of distress there. And then, if they're spending 8 or 9 hours in bed every night and then waking up feeling like they just need to go back to bed because they can't make it through the day because they're so tired and sleepy, then, that just impacts their ability to, function in their life's fullest. So there really is a lot of reasons why it's important to address sleep apnea, because it can tie into a lot of other things. And so just, it's amazing what a good night's rest can really do for your general health and well-being.